Most people think their life is written in years. Birth year, graduation year, retirement year. But the truth is quieter. Your life is written in ledgers, not the ones in banks, the ones in your habits. Let me tell you a story. At 24, Robert believed effort was everything. Show up early, leave late, say yes. That's what built success, he thought. And for a long time, it worked. By 33, Robert had a reputation: reliable, hardworking, essential. The kind of man companies don't want to lose. And that should have been a compliment. Every quarter, Robert received a report. Not an official one, a silent one. It came in the form of missed dinners, postponed vacations, promises to slow down next year. He never filed it. He never questioned it. At 38, something changed. Not at work, at home. One evening, his teenage son asked him a simple question. "Dad, what do you actually do?" Robert opened his mouth. Nothing came out. That night, he couldn't sleep. Not because he was tired, because something felt unbalanced, like numbers that didn't add up. Weeks later, during a routine audit at work, Robert noticed something strange. A small account, barely visible. It wasn't losing money. It wasn't making. One afternoon, Robert realized he had taken a full week off. No calls, no crises. The world didn't collapse. That's when it clicked. Here's the truth most people avoid. If your income disappears when you stop showing up, you don't own your life. You're renting it. Ownership doesn't feel exciting at first. It feels small, slow, almost invisible. But it compounds in ways hustle never will. By his early 50s, Robert had something rare. Not early retirement, not luxury. Alignment. His work matched his values. His time matched his priorities. He still worked, but every hour now showed up differently in the ledger. Not as exhaustion, as equity. Most people never read their real ledger. They track income, they track expenses, but they never track dependence. So if you're listening right now, ask yourself, what happens to your life the moment you stop pushing? Because the wealth that matters is the one that stays when you step away. Most people never reach this point, not because they can't, because they don't stop long enough to see it. Once Robert began reading his real ledger, he couldn't unsee it. Every decision left a mark. Some added value, others created debt. Not financial, but personal. Debt in energy, debt in attention, debt in time. And unlike money, this kind of debt charged interest immediately. He noticed how often urgency was manufactured. Emails labeled critical, meetings that could have been avoided, crises that existed only because systems were fragile. Fragility was expensive. So Robert began asking a different question. What breaks if I'm not here? At first, the answer was everything. That was the problem. He started designing his work as if he were planning to leave. Not tomorrow, eventually. He documented, he delegated, he simplified. Every process had to survive his absence, not because he wanted out, but because he wanted ownership. The strange thing was this: as he made himself less necessary, his value increased. Not as a worker, as an architect. People stopped measuring him by hours. They started measuring him by outcomes. And outcomes travel further than effort ever does. Outside of work, the ledger changed too. Dinners stopped being postponed. Weekends stopped feeling rushed. Conversations grew longer. He wasn't catching up anymore. He was present. One evening, years after that first question, his son asked another. "Dad, why don't you work as much as my friends' parents?" Robert smiled. "I build things that keep working," he said, "even when I'm not." That answer felt complete. Here's the quiet truth. Freedom doesn't arrive as a moment. It arrives as a margin of time, a margin of energy, a margin of choice. And margins are built slowly, by people willing to be bored now so they can be free later. Most people chase income. Few people build independence. The difference is invisible, until it isn't. By the time others notice your freedom, it's already too late to copy. Because what you built wasn't loud, it was layered. Robert still checks his ledger. Not daily, not obsessively, but honestly. Because the ledger never lies. So before you ask how much you earn, ask a better question. How much of your life is dependent on you being exhausted? If stepping away feels impossible, that's not a schedule problem. That's a structure problem. And the moment you start fixing structure, even quietly, the ledger begins to change. Not all wealth shows up in accounts. Some of it shows up the first time you stop pushing, and nothing falls apart. That's when you know. You're no longer renting your life. You own it.